This is All the Right Marketing, a publishing podcast by Cardinal Rule Press. Now, here's your host, Maria Dismondy.
Okay.
Welcome to All the Right Marketing, where we talk with business owners and industry leaders about marketing their programs and their products. Our guests share tips that help anyone who loves a book, whether you are a librarian, bookseller, aspiring writer, published author, or a publisher. The truth of the matter here is that the advice coming out of these conversations can be relatable to anyone marketing products. Today, our guest, Julia Hengst, is a licensed marriage and family therapist, an avid surfer, traveler, and word nerd who resides in Maui. Passionate about psychology, spirituality, and media literacy, she holds an undergraduate degree in media studies from UC Berkeley, a master's degree in counseling psychology, and an imaginary degree from the University of Puns. There we go. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you for having me.
So, Julia, you have lived in India and you studied in California, and now you live in Maui. I mean, your journey is quite an adventurous one.
It's been a good adventure. I've lived a very colorful life, and I feel super grateful for that, for all the places I've gotten to go.
That's really
and
great.
to end up in Maui is pretty great.
Maui, how long have you been in Maui?
Almost 4 years, just about
Okay.
4 years. Yeah.
Very cool. And you are starting a series of books. So let's hear about this.
Yeah, this series is called Venus and Her Fly Trip. And book one, which is Venus Underwater, Songs from Mermaidia, is out already. And that has already been an adventure because we started with the fundraising through Kickstarter, doing crowdsourced funding. And we've tried one Kickstarter trying to fundraise for all 6 books at once, which anyone who's trying to publish a book realizes it's pretty expensive with printing and shipping and all of that. So our budget was really high and we did not meet that Kickstarter goal. So we instead went for the first 2 books, which will be with the same artist, Esther Samuels Davis, who is wonderfully talented. And so it's self-published. And I have quickly learned, when the project started is around, like when the first book was published was around when COVID started. So my work as a psychotherapist I have never been so busy as in the last 2 years.
Oh,
in terms of getting to marketing and distribution, that's been a real challenge. So it's been a big learning curve to do self-publishing while I have a very full-time job.
A very full-time job. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And you have hobbies too. I don't want to skip over your hobbies of surfing and riding motorcycles as well. That's part of that colorful life.
It is.
How does your colorful life relate to your character?
Oh, that is a good point. I relate in some ways to all of the characters in the book. And I think one thing, especially having lived outside of the US and living in different cultures and interacting with people from all over the planet, is open-mindedness and fluidity and a sense of never quite knowing what's going to happen, but trying to stay positive, trying to see the positive in every situation is an important part of all of the characters, actually.
That's fantastic. And we'll have all in the show notes, we'll make sure to link. And I actually skipped over that. I didn't see the link was here. But yes, Venus and Her Fly Trip. So tell me about Venus and Her Fly Trip. Is the series going to follow this character and she meets other characters, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, good question. Yes, the heroine or the shero is Venus, who is a mermaid, who studies magic underwater, but the magic that I'm going to have in these books is actually based on quote unquote actual magic, divination, healing gems and crystals and that sort of thing. Plus a lot of yogic ideas from yoga around kind of how to work with our minds. Some emotional intelligence is going to be in there as well. So it's going to follow, the first 2 books are Venus underwater, really in her world of Mermaidia. where she has her first experience of the Earth Walkers and that strange world that they live in. And then the middle two books are going to be where Venus comes upon a farm and finds that 3 different types of cows have been brainwashed by the villain, the over rancher, to think one type of cow is better than the other. And she's going to work with a bunch of birds and other animals to help free the cows. And that's going to tie into media literacy a little bit, because I think brainwashing from the media is a big issue. And
it is.
It is, especially in this day and age. And then the last 2 books of the series are going to be Venus going into a bit of a world of paradox. So in each of these books, she's going to meet a lot of different characters. And one of the things about mermaids is that they can communicate telepathically, psychically with animals, with trees, with plants, with the natural world. Mm-hmm. And the one thing about Earthwalkers is they've forgotten that they're connected to nature. So there's going to be this increasing experience of Venus kind of becoming a little more of her human side and forgetting these parts of herself in the kids' books. And as she goes along, she's going to be reminded of her mermaid nature. And by the way, in terms of playing the long game with this series, there's going to be 6 books for teenagers. So it's going to be 6 for teens and then 6 for kids and 6 for teenagers in the long run.
Fantastic. You know, as you're talking, I feel like you could be, if you took out the word mermaid, I feel like you could be talking about patients of yours, right? Like, I think probably your work as a marriage and family therapist is really coming into play here, like the emotional intelligence and how important it is to pay attention to our emotions, and media literacy. And you said something else. Oh, how the Earth Walkers are disconnected to nature.
Yes.
All of that probably stems from your work that you are doing with families and couples.
That's very astute. And yes, it's really important. That's one of the things that I have to say I was influenced living in India, because India, you know, interestingly enough, it has 3 times as many people as the United States in 1/3 of the space.
Ooh,
and it's people,
one more time. I want to really unpack that 3 times.
Yeah,
go ahead, one more time.
As many people as the United States in 1/3 of the space. So if the US was divided, you know, into thirds, all of the people in India would fit into 1/3, but it's 3 times as many as Americans.
Wow.
And I know it's a difficult time in India right now too. I think it's a difficult time on the planet. But one of the things I was very influenced by was how people of different spiritual traditions generally got along. And there's this idea in some of the spiritual traditions over there, Hinduism, Buddhism, that we're fundamentally good deep down inside. And so that informs a lot of my work as a psychotherapist. And I think the field of psychology in general could be a little more positive focused. So yes, these books are a way to kind of show that, as well as mermaids are very connected to their intuition. And Earthwalkers, I think, you know, I'm going to play on that contrast.
Yeah.
That it's important for us not to forget our intuition and be connected to our bodies somatically.
Fantastic. Wow. As a former educator, I just keep thinking how important these books are going to be for students and for children, and as a parent. Okay. So now we're going to dive into the marketing part of this chat. So I don't know if I've interviewed many authors who have had a series before. How can having a series really play into a marketing strategy? What are you thinking?
It's a good question. I'm an amateur. Let me make that clear. I've never published anything before. This sort of happened in some ways. I don't know how to describe that, but how does that play into marketing strategies? It's really informed me about playing the long game with my marketing strategy, that not worrying so much about book sales, especially with this first book, but really holding the vision. I think that's been one of my challenges, is holding the vision of the long game, seeing that each of these books is going to build upon each other, one another, and trusting that process, trusting that there will be word of mouth. It's been really important for me not to focus on the book sales. We haven't sold too many. It's under a couple hundred of this first one. But the feedback I've gotten, especially from teachers and parents who really get the messages of loving kindness, of positivity, of emotional intelligence, that has really given me a lot of inspiration. And in the meantime, I'm just doing a lot of trial and error with different designs for social media. I had to look around for different people who could help with social media. So I hope to be growing that in the coming year or two, especially as I'm going to be starting to write the third book soon. The second one, the artist and I are just starting to storyboard it.
Okay.
It's going to take her 8 months to a year to illustrate.
Okay.
So later this year, I'll start ramping up the marketing for that one.
You said something, and as a company, Cardinal Rule Press, we put out a survey a few years ago to our readers, and we just wanted to know more about our readers and how did they learn about books and what have you. And we had like a drop down, not multiple choice, but different options. And the number one response to how did you hear about our books was word of mouth.
Wow.
Word of mouth. So when you said that, I started thinking about how important that is. And you're probably talking all day long with people. How do you think you can get people talking about the book?
One idea is the niche market, in terms of, given kind of the mental health challenges of kids and families right now on the planet, just opening that discussion, because I think there's a great need for it without freaking people out, because actually the goal of these books is to prevent self-hatred in young people. And that has been an ongoing, almost controversial question, because some people are like, why are you putting that so negatively? And I'm like, when there are kids that are 7 who are talking about really heavy mental health issues, it's the time to at least have a conversation and just open it up. And also for the middle 2 books, 3 female artists are going to be collaborating on the art together. So I like the idea of trying new things in the world of kids' books that will capture people's interest. Mm-hmm. And for instance, a friend of mine works at a surf boutique here in Maui, and she got the books put in there, and that has actually been one of the sources of steady sales for us. So local community outreach has been helpful.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Self-hatred in young people. There's so many things you can connect to around that too. I mean, we have these television shows that are coming out that talk like 13 Reasons Why, which is not for children. But I know as a parent, I watched the first few episodes and it was really eye-opening to what our kids are dealing with today. And I think parents can use books like this that you're talking about to open the door to discussion, right?
Yes. And one of the ideas in the world of mermaidia is that, no one's too big, no one's too small. They're all different. There's the full spectrum of colors. There's different styles. So it's a very inclusive world. That's really important. And culturally in Indian medicine, for instance, in Ayurveda, there are 3 different main constitutions. And one of them sort of describes people who tend to be really thin and wiry. Some people are a little more solidly built. Body image issues have just gone crazy, especially during COVID, and eating disorders. This isn't really so relevant for kids, I hope. But something where that's normalized, of like, not everybody is meant to be one size, which I think it's making everyone crazy. It's making a lot of people crazy, and a lot of self-judgment. So hopefully these books can help show, not tell, that idea, to use that cliche.
Take me to more importantly, I want to go to Mermaidia. Like, let me live there. It sounds like a really good place.
It's a good fantasy world.
It does.
Yes.
It does. So Julia, this is really great. And I mean, when we talk about word of mouth, I just kind of wrap things up with the fact that you truly, like, this podcast, we're talking about the book. word of mouth, right? So it's just, there's so many different avenues to be talking about our books, to be talking about the concept of the book. Like you said, in your community, you can talk about it with different styles that you're trying. 3 illustrators illustrating one book, that is going to be talked about. And then, you know, being able to talk about it in your daily life too. And, you know, maybe even use analogies from Mermedia in your practice with family and children that you work with.
That's right.
This is fantastic. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
What I've learned is just not giving up. That's one thing that with this series is, if I keep connecting to my intention to share some of these messages, that helps me through the moments where I'm like, this is going to be impossible. It takes so much time and effort to do marketing and distribution. The intention, I think, is really important for being a source of fuel to keep going.
I love that. Be centered, know what your intention is, and keep going back to it. You know where to find Julia for more information. We will include all of her social media handles, IG, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're going to put those in there. And we look forward to our next interview. Remember, we air every Tuesday. Until then, think outside the box and don't be afraid to reach your audience in new and creative ways. Thank you, Julia.
Cardinal Rule Press offers a variety of support to authors, booksellers, librarians, and families. Find out more at cardinalrulepress.com.